We have a jam-packed program today. Roger's going to take us through the Getting Started Guide for developers. I want to open the microphone up to anybody who wants to talk about ongoing pilots, anybody who wants to ask questions about pilots, and anybody who wants to talk about any other topic as well. So how about if we get started right away with Roger, and then at the conclusion we'll open it up unless anybody has a pressing question that you would like to start the discussion with first thing.
Hey, Jim, this is Chip. Why don't we give an update on the SUAs first? Roger.
Go right ahead.
Okay. The SUAs will be going out today. We have everything all set to pull the trigger. Is anybody from our customer shop on, Tamai or Mike Smith, on the call today? Yeah, I was hoping to get the official approval right now, and we will push the button. Literally, they'll start going out. So as soon as I get the final approval, they will go out the door, but that will be today at long last. We have about, I think, 178 people on our list. That includes people who previously had downloaded, had signed up for usage and signed the previous SUA. Because this is a new contract with DHS and not NASA, DHS has requested the new SUA be signed prior to obtaining the latest version of usage. So we have 178. 100 or so had previously signed the SUA and presumably downloaded the dev kit, as we were calling it at the time. And we have then another 70 or so folks who have requested more recently to download the what we now call the installation kit or the install kit. So this will be similar software to what you received before, with one exception, other than it's new and improved. But this software also includes the core-to-core communication capability, which we had disabled in the dev kit. It includes updated Getting Started Guide, other documentation, and updated sample code as well. When you get to the site, there are three items to click on. The first is the installation kit itself, which is a big zip file. The second is the installation plan. And the third is the Access 2 sample code for those of you who are interested in Access 2. We hadn't finished testing the Access 2 software, our Access to sample code, when we bundled up the install kit. So everything should be up there, and we should be releasing the SUAs today. Once you get the SUA, have your company read it over, sign it, return it to us according to the instructions, and we will then send you a username and password that will get you access to the installation kit and related documentation. Any questions or comments? All right, with that, we'll turn it over to Roger. I will share out the slides here momentarily. All right. Figure out how to do it. All right, you should be seeing the cover sheet. If someone could confirm that I'm hooked up to the internet, that would be great.
You're all set.
Great. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is go over sort of what's in the Getting Started Guide, but it's also just getting started with the basic services that you'll need to start building an adapter. Plus, along the way, I talk about some things you need to think about as you build an adapter. If you've got any questions, just go ahead and ask me anytime. So, next slide. So I'm going to give an overview of what is it that an adapter should do when it interacts with the core. Then I'll talk about some generalized adapter concepts, things, again, like I said, you need to think about with respect to your application, with respect to adapters and how you want to use them. And then I'm going to talk about just 3 services today, the Resource Profile Service, Resource Instance Service, and Incident Management Service. And along the way, I'll also hit on the Notification Service to show how you get notifications. So, interactions with the core. This slide shows the simplified version of how an incident would be created in the core, and then other applications would be notified about that incident. We start up on the right-hand side, and assuming we have an incident management application with an adapter built in or attached, and I'll talk about that later. The first step is to create an incident on the core. The core then creates 3 default work products for that incident, which are an ICS, a map work product, and an incident work product. At that point, the core is going to put notifications in the queue of any resource instances, and I'll explain that term a little bit later, that have asked to be notified about those 3 types of work products. And then when the applications ask for their notifications, the appropriate notifications will take place. So in this case, we can see that the incident management application only has a profile that has 2 different types of work products that it asks for notifications of, but the planning application is getting all 3 of those types of notifications. So the important part here is that they receive notifications based on what is in their resource profile, and I'll get to the resource profile when we talk about that service. The main thing that an adapter needs to do is translate those work products into their application-specific data models, and that means different things to different applications, and we'll touch on that subject also later. You also decide how to assimilate usage data into the actual application and to the user's interface, because you might want to take different approaches there depending upon your target audience. And then on the other side, you need to decide, the adapter or the application needs to figure out what data do you actually want to put into a work product and share out to the core and attach it as information associated with an incident. Does anybody any questions on that? All right. Second thing that you might want to do is just update a work product that's been associated with this incident. This can be any of the types of work products we have, and you can see the different services that are available in the incident or in the Getting Started guide, and then also in the interface description document that's in the download. In this instance, the planning application received, on the last slide, notification about a map work product. Well, this planning application might know that, say for an instance, a user saw that this incident had an evacuation route that might be helpful to that. So that planning application would get the current version of the work product, the map work product, and add a new layer to it to represent an evacuation route, and publish that new work product back to the usage core in step 2. Once that happens, all the other applications that have set up their resource profile to be interested in map work products will now receive a notification so they can get that work product and then resolve that layer and put it on their associated displays however is appropriate. So the important things here are, again, translating data from the application back into a usage work product and deciding how that maps in, and also which data are you going to actually expose and put out on the core for people to share and post it back to shared. Okay? That's it. Next slide. So as we talked about that's kind of the general flow. Now, there's some general concepts that all adapters have to start thinking about when you start to go create one. One of the things is you're going to be getting data in now from an outside source, and some applications may not have done that before. For instance, when we talk to some of the CAD vendors, you know, the guys who are actually manning the 911 stations, they want to know only what they're interested in. That's the incidents that they have to dispatch. They don't necessarily want to see these extraneous incidents coming in from usage. So that's just one example of where you might want to show, how to figure out how do you want to show that particular type of user other information, and if so, how? So for instance, here in this one, there's a couple blue icons up there, and that might be the stuff that your application already puts on the map and uses. Extra stuff, maybe you'll color differently or mark differently or use different icons so that your users know that this is other data coming in from other sources, specifically usage. Next slide. Another way that you might do that is an example of this EMSE application. They maintained a list, they have an interface already for maintaining their internal incidents that are for that application and for the share with their users and how they do their whole system. When they interfaced to usage, they came up with a new form where they showed just the usage incident and then allowed people to actually manually select, all right, I want to take that usage incident and make it one that I want to monitor in my actual incident or incident management application. That's just a second way of thinking about how do I want to integrate usage information into my application. Now, when you start to put together an adapter, there's several ways you can integrate with your application. One is to integrate this adapter code directly into your application. I'll talk about a WAR file as a web application. That would mean that you would link, or put together all the WAR or the jar files and everything for your adapter into your WAR file and distribute that and embed it right in there so that it can talk directly to your internal code. A second way to potentially do it is if your application already has an external API that is rich enough to do what you need to do with the core, you could also just build this as an external application that it hits both the core's API and your application's API to manage the data flow back and forth. The other thing about adapters is this is your front line of your dissemination control. You can set them up to be receive only, to send only, or send and receive. And on the last part on this slide, the other thing you need to keep in mind is that this is your chance to decide what goes out onto usage. Now, the idea is that we're trying to share, so we want people to put out as much as they are comfortable with and that they want to share. And you also have to remember when you set up to share core-to-core or with other applications within your jurisdiction or your location, you've already made agreements that everybody will be sharing this data. But this is one place where you can put in, filter out either extraneous data, because I know lots of applications have very rich and large data models, and we really don't need to get all of that data into a usage incident or any of the usage work products. This is the point where you decide what data actually does go into a work product to be shared. Next slide. All right, before I get into this slide, does anybody have any questions on those last few slides?
Roger, this is Adam. When does the digest thing happen?
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll talk about that in this slide here.
Great.
Okay. So what this slide is trying to show is taking all those concepts of having an application, an adapter, and here those two could be, one executable or two executables, like I showed on one of the previous slides. Kind of a subset of the services that the core provides, and a little bit of loop and action of how these things work together to try to synchronize and update data with the core. So the basics are all down on the bottom. You kind of work your way up. One of the first things you need to do is create a resource profile. And what a resource profile really does is it specifies which types of usage work products your application/adapter wants to be notified about. There may be lots of different types of work products out there, but maybe you're only interested in incidents and maps, and you don't need to be notified that the ICS work product has changed. So that's what the resource profile service is. You set up, they're kind of a template that you would instantiate as a resource instance in the next step up to actually be able to get your notification. So after using the profile service, and again, I'll go in, I've got a long set of slides after that for details about each of these services that we'll go into. Excuse me. After you've created a resource profile that will represent your interest in work products, you need to get a place to be able to get your notifications. That's when you create a resource instance. That instance will allow you to ask for notifications, and it also has one other thing called, and it works with the notification service, called Get Matching Messages, which I'll talk about. But that really lets you get up to the current state of the core and find out what you would have been notified had you been online. So then now I can say, okay, I've been notified of all the work products that are out on the core that I should have based on my profile, and now I know I'm up to date with what's on the core. The next part, once you start that, you're ready to get started. You can start creating incidents, updating work products, getting work products. And so starting on the right-hand side, your application then would go up through the adapter to these create, update, close, and archive operations that we have on all these different domain services for the different work products. Today I'm going to talk just about incidents. So the incident management service that is one of the domain services manages an incident work product. And you're able to create, update, close, and archive an incident through managing the incident work product. Now, in the first slide, the application then would use a create on the incident work product service and pass in for one of the ways is the name incident representation with information in it about title, location, description, and any other data you want to put into that name incident work product. At that point, the incident work product will parse that incident document you sent us and create a digest of that work product and attach it into the work product itself so that it gets stored into the data that the core is maintaining about the incident in the work product service, which we see down in a little lower in that diagram. After that, after it gets stored into the work product service, is when the notification service takes over and goes through and puts notification messages in every resource instance notification queue that asks to be notified about incident work products. And then the next time the application actually goes through the notification service and calls Get Messages, it will get a list of the notifications that have happened since the last time it called. Now the application can look at the notification, which contains just the digest, and decide if it's interested in that work product or not. The digest itself contains at least a title, a description, and a location if there was one in the work product. So many applications, that may be enough information that it needs about that work product to, if you're really just putting a dot on the map, that should be enough for you. You won't even have to go get the work product. If you want the full full name incident work product, then you would use the metadata from the notification to get the work product from the work product service. Now you have the access to the full set of data in the incident work product. And at that point, you would be able to then go up through update to the incident management service and update information about that work product, which again flows back down into the work product service, which causes notifications to go out. Everybody who has a resource instance that's been subscribed to resource notifications will know that there's been an update to that work product. They can go get it. Now they have the latest version, and we all have the same version of the information. So there was a lot there. Adam, did that answer your question?
So the digest is automatically created, right?
Yes, for any of the work products that have an associated work product service, like incident, alert, command, we will create digests for.
Okay.
If appropriate. Some of them, we just don't create a digest yet because we're not sure what to put on there yet. So we're working through that as we go. But all the ones that have at least locations, we create digests for.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, that was a lot of information going through on the slides. Anybody else have any questions?
Hey, Roger, this is Mark. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
On the location information, if there is location information, is it identical in the digest and the main work product payload?
Not necessarily. It is after conversion, but for instance, the NEAM work product breaks out the lat longs into degrees, minutes, and seconds, whereas the digest contains it in decimal degrees. So we'll convert that into decimal degrees as we put it into the digest.
Okay, but yeah, what I'm really wondering about is all the same information would be there. For instance, you might have 3 or 4 different features, which are really polygons. They'd all be in the digest?
You asked me a tough question there. I believe at the moment we only grab the first geometry that comes out of the incident, especially incident and alerts, I think, are the main ones that have this possibility.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
I think we grab only the first one as the representation for the digest.
Okay, and then the payload would have potentially a whole list.
Correct. Then you could get the payload and get all the rest of the information about it.
Okay.
Now, I mean, that's one of the things we can do is we can pull them all out and put them in there. The thing that's going to do is that when you use the UCORE digest, you'll then have several located at references because as you use them, they're the who, what, where, when is what's contained in the digest, and the relationships between those who, what, where, when. So what you would end up with is an event representing the incident, that's the what, with 3 located at and 3 geometry locations. So it just gets to be more parsing and more following links and references. But it
seems like the digest should have, it would be logical for the digest to just have a single, like centroid or some reference.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Go on. So that picture kind of showed everything overall. What I'm going to go through now is 2 slides on just in a sequence. Okay, so how do I do this in sequence? And I talked through it on the last slide, but this kind of shows it a little bit in more sequence order so you can get a feel for what you have to do. Here, the admin console creates 2 resource profiles. Then each of the applications register their resource instance. When they get that, they are now able to do get matching messages, which would tell them, again, if I had been up, what notifications would I have seen for all the current work products on the core, which allows an application to get all those work products and build up its state that represents the current state of the core. And that's what I say is process current state. That means different things to different applications. And again, it depends on how you construct your adapter to integrate the information from usage, what that actually means. So now, at the end of this slide, this sequence, your application should be connected to usage, connected loosely, and have the current state of all the work products on the core according to their matches of your resource profile of what you were interested in. Okay, next slide. After that, we can start now working with the actual services, which would be creating incidents and updating work products. So this goes through the sequence that I walked through in the previous slides up there with the pictures of the different applications. The incident application would create an incident on the core, which would create those 3 different work products I talked about. Once the 2 applications did a get notifications, they would be notified about all those work products that match their resource profile. Then they could get any of the incident or get work products that they're interested in. So in this case, I just showed them getting the incident and getting the map work product. Again, the planning application now would do its processing to find the right evacuation route that's important to that incident, add the information into the map work product as a link to WMS to WFS, and publish that change back as an update to the map work product. Wrong set. Once again, when you get the notifications, then you would get notifications, you get work product notifications, then you'd be able to get the map work product. And now the incident application would be able to resolve that link to that new layer and add it to its map so that it could see the evacuation route. That's kind of the overall flow of how this would work. And this is in sequence so we can see the particular steps you need to get to.
Roger, if I am already connected, I don't do any of that get incident work product. It's skipping right down to having me being notified as long as I've had my core connected.
Well, no, when you get notifications, you're getting just the digest of the work product. So as I kind of mentioned before, if the digest contains enough information for you, then no, you don't need to get the work product. But if you want to get the full work product, you still need to ask to get the work product, the full work product. Does that answer your question, Jim?
Actually, if I was asking about the get notifications, I only need to do that once when I start up.
No, you should do that periodically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you'll want to get new notifications when they happen. So that's why, actually, I had fixed this slide, and I think we pulled up the wrong set. The two that are work product notifications really should be get notifications.
So get notifications is polling for new notifications?
Yes.
It's not. You're not registering for it, saying I want to listen for new notifications.
No, there is a way you can go through the notification service if you implement the WS Notify standards, Notify interface. You can tell the notification service, I want to be called back here with notifications, and then you would get true push notifications.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing you need to be careful of there is you've got to watch that because you're going to get notifications at any time. And so you have to make sure you handle the threads or whatever appropriately.
Mm. But there must be some queue, right, on my side?
Well, no, because that's just going to be a web service post to your application.
I see.
Post it right there.
Got it.
And you'll have to handle that however you need to within your application or adapter.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So polling is easier.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, we did the polling first, even though we knew the specs supported two different ways of doing it, because it gives the application more control over when it's processing notifications. And you don't have to necessarily worry about threading issues. Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and move on then. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about each of the services in more detail. If you remember, starting up the stack on that one slide from the bottom is the resource profile service. This is the way that you would represent how applications or resources, depending on how you want to call them, what work product types they're interested in. And you can think of it as a template almost for different types of users. So you might have several incident management applications that are all going to connect to a single core, and you might set them up with the same profile that they're interested in, incidents and maps, and that's it. So on this, you can fill in an identifier, a description. That's just some extra information. Or the identifier is important because we'll give you or you can give us an identifier, just a name, a string name, a description if you want to keep a description with it. We added in NIMS resource typing. This is an optional piece. Further down the line, what we're going to use this for is when we start having resource profiles representing roles within the ICS so that we can have proper resource typing on them. The bottom part is the important part where you add interest in your work products. For each different type of work product, you can add an interest element with a topic expression that equals the work product type. So it would be incident, ICS, map, view context, alert, etc. You can also specify an XPath statement into the product itself to try to limit that, how many notifications you get. And then if your XPath has any namespaces, you need to add it, give us a map of the namespace mapping. Once you submit this, then the core will keep track of the different resource profiles that are available, and you can register instances against that, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now you can do this programmatically through the resource profile, or on the next slide, you can use the admin console on the core to actually enter this information to describe resource profile. And on our form here, you can only enter one interest, and then afterwards, you can right-click on the profile and add more interest to it. Next slide. Yeah. So once we have a profile that represents what connections to the core might be interested in, different connections, different applications, different resources to service the incident, we can create a resource instance. Next slide. With a resource instance, you can give it, again, an identifier, so a unique identifier for each core, a local resource ID if you need to keep track of a separate ID, and then here in the resource profile ID, that ID that you supplied when you created the profile goes in here, and you tell which profile this resource instance should instantiate or be an instantiation of. You can think of it that way. I have a statement on here too. There's also an unregister on the resource instance service that you can unregister yourself when you're shutting down if you want to. It's good practice because otherwise all your notifications will keep queuing up, and when you come in, you're going to get a long stream of notifications again. It's probably better to just unregister yourself and then use the get matching messages, because you'll end up getting messages for incidents that have been created or deleted and are gone, and you won't really have to process if you keep the notification queue active. But if you want to do that, and that's important, then you can do that also. Next slide. Any questions on that? All right. After calling create or register for your resource instance, you're going to get a structure for a resource instance, and this is the structure that will get returned to you. With the identifier, the description that you supplied, the source identification is where we put in the core ID that this is attached to, so that you know what core ID you've been attached to. That's just your fully qualified core name. The important part is down in the endpoint. In the endpoint, in the address, is the value that you'll need to use for getting notification. So in the response, once you create your resource, you should go ahead and save that off because you're going to need that to get your messages, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then again, it lists which profile you created this resource instance with. Okay, next slide. So once we've got a resource instance, now we're able to get notifications. Go ahead. The get messages request is very simple. It's the specification. This message request comes straight out of the WS notification spec, and so it just has a big any in there. So what we decided to do was put a WSA2 element in there with the address that just came out of that resource instance that you returned when you registered. Now it also has a maximum number as required, and we didn't implement that to return you just the number of messages. We return them all currently, but it is a required element in the schema, so you can put in a number in there. So go ahead, next slide. once you do a get messages, what you'll get is a get messages response. And this is just an example of what you might get in one, taking out a lot of the details. But there's 3 different types of messages you may receive from uses. The first one in the top is a work product notification. As I mentioned before, that will contain a digest of a UCOR type digest of the work product. Second would be a work product deleted notification. Whenever a work product is closed and archived, all the resource instances that were interested in that type of work product will receive a deleted notification, so you know that that work product is no longer in use. And the third, and we'll get into this at another meeting, is you may get an EDXL DE distribution element message, and that may contain RM messages or just other DE messages. And again, I'm not going to go in that today because that'll be a much longer topic, and we'll pick that up on another telecon. Any questions
Roger?
there?
Yeah, Roger.
Yeah.
Did you say for an update to a work product, it's the first message?
Well, you're going to get, if you look in the metadata that's attached to the work product, when it's created, you're going to get version number 1. And anytime it's updated after that, you'll get an incremental version number. When it's closed, it'll increment the version number 1 last time as the last version of the increment. And once you archive it, then it's gone. So did that answer your question, Mark?
I think so. What you're saying is to detect that there's an update, we track the version number.
Yeah, and really, it's unless it's version number 1 or you have not seen that incident or that work product identifier before, it's an update. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I think so.
In most of the example code I put together, I basically just look up, have I seen this incident or this work product identifier before? If not, then it's a new one. If I have, then I take it as an update. But you can also watch the version number. So if it's not version number 1, then it's an updated work product. Now, when you do get matching messages, you're not going to get version number 1, though. You'll get version number 10 or 11, whatever it is that's current on the core.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions on that? All right. Go on to the next. Yeah. So get matching messages. Once again, you would, for your resource instance, you would just give it a resource instance ID, and we'll go off and look up your identifier and return you a message that looks fairly close to the get matching messages response. It just contains a list of work product identifiers, and you can process it through in the same way. They will be the work product digest for each of the different work products or messages that you have received. Or it will be for work products, for the current work products on the core that match your resource profile. All right, so before we move on to looking at the incident management service, are there any questions on resource profiles and resource instances? All right, go ahead and go to the incident. To create one, we've got operations on each of the different work product type services, mostly for create, update, and delete type operations. Some of them have a few different types of operations based on the specific type of work product. But the incident management service is fairly easy with creates, updates, close, and archive. There's only a few data elements that we really need to have put in there for usage, and I'll talk about them on the following slides. But the NEAM incident model is a fairly rich data set. It's a large model. There's lots of places that you can put extra data. Any data that you put in any of the rest of the fields, we will preserve, and it will be carried around with the work product everywhere it goes. So you can use the other fields. If you look up the NEAM incident type on their site, you can go through the or you can just go through the schema that's delivered with the core and put your data in there, and we will make sure it gets shared. Next slide. This is a representation of the NEAM incident type, which is what you use in the create incident. We use the activity identification for the usage identifier, so we will put that value in there. So if you put anything in there, we're going to override it with our own. The category type is for the incident type. Now there's a lot of discussion on that because there's no real standard on it, but you can either put in, a good idea is to put in the UCore incident type identifier, and you can look those up. The schema, the UCore schema comes with the core, and you can find those types. Or you can also really use your local identifier. If you are all going to be local, you can use the local identifier, and that way everybody keeps the same incident type. Then we need a date, a name, and then we would also like a location, and if possible, a jurisdiction information. And let's go to the next slide, and I'll talk about location. Location. Okay. The NEAM location type, again, is a very large type, but the one that we use for creating the digest is either the area polygon or the area circular region. Now, we'll also digest the location address, but we'd really like to have either the circular or polygon so we can get a geocoded location already. This would be, you'd put this is the location where you would put these two, any incident location information. All right, next slide. Again, the organization type that represents the jurisdiction has a lot of information in it. Once again, you can put information in any of those fields, could be carried around, but what we'd like to see is at least a unique identifier for the jurisdiction, and then if possible, a location. And again, that organization location is a location type, which is the same type we just saw in the previous field, and the same comments on it apply. So to actually create an incident, you would use the create incident request, you'd use the create incident request, but this is what you get in your response. You'd get a work product processing status element that tells you whether your update was accepted or not. Because each of the updates need to be based, well, this is a create, so you'll always get a valid back. It tells you whether it's been accepted or not. In the work product element that's returned, you're going to get back new metadata in there. And in there will be a work product identification element that uniquely identifies the work product with respect to usage. And that's what you'll always use when you do updates or gets or anything else with a work product. And you'll always need to have the most recent version to start with so that we keep versioning and so that people don't override each other's potential changes since we're in a distributed system. The other piece of work or metadata in the work product is the work product properties. That contains things like created by, who created it and when, who last updated it, etc. And then this is where you're going to get the digest back. This will be the first place that anybody would get the digest, and that will have the digest, the UCore digest of the work product. Next slide. Now, when we go to update an incident with the incident management service, next slide. Again, there's an operation in the incident management service. We'll go through in the next slide the details of some of the information in there. Once again, we preserve any of the data in there that you put in there. Now, and as I mentioned, when you get a work product, you'll need to be, if you want to update it, you need to make sure you have the most current version before you start an update. And so we will make sure of that before the update is accepted. Next slide. So the update incident request contains that work product identification element I've been talking about. And you can get that from either the create incident when you created it. You may get that from a notification if you got notified about the work product. You can also get that from the work product service or the incident service asking about give me a list of all the work products associated with an incident, and you'll get the latest work product identifier there and be able to get that latest version of the work product. So either way you get that, it'll be the same data, and you use the entire structure that you get back without having to change it. And then you just include the same incident element as we saw in the create. You would do the get work product and modify just the fields that you want to change, and then post it back using update, and that would notify everybody about the change where they could go get the new version of the work product. Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about is closing and archiving an incident. Next slide. These are fairly easy. Again, they're on the incident management service. I'll talk about the actual request on the next couple slides. When you close an incident, it closes or marks as closed or inactive all the work products associated with that incident. So we will no longer accept updates to those work products. Next slide. In the close incident request, all we need is the incident identifier. The incident identifier is down in the work product properties of the associated groups. An incident is considered a group that this work product of a group of work products that it applies to, and an incident is a group of work products. So that's why it's down in its associated groups. So once you had received notifications about the incident work product, you would be able to get the incident group identifier or incident ID from the work product properties and request that the incident be closed. Now, closed just means that people can no longer update any of the work products or anything about the incident. Now, to clear that off of any list that is in the, when you get the list in the admin console or you get a list of incidents from the incident management service and you're done and the incident is closed and done, you would also archive the incident. Archiving it removes all the work products, and this is where the work product deleted notifications would go out. And what that really is we're not archiving the incident information, but that would trigger any clients that want to archive that uses information off, that this is the time to do it. So once again, the archive incident is basically exactly the same as the close. You go get the incident identifier out of the work product properties from the incident work product, and you can use that in the archive incident request to archive the incident. And that's all I've got. Any questions on that?
Roger, this is Mark. I have a question on, sorry about this, but on close and archive. So I think if I understood the way you described it, when you close, the incident is then deactivated for any updates, but it still remains in the system. So if I was to go and connect after it's closed and ask for the current set of incidents, would I get that incident back?
Yes.
Okay, until it's archived, and then I wouldn't get it back, right?
Correct. Right.
Okay.
And what you would see was when you got the incident work product for that closed work product, or actually in the work product identification, there's a status in there, and instead of being active, like you always see for all the other work products, when the one is closed, it'll be inactive.
Okay.
That's how you can tell the difference. Anybody else?
When I get that inactive incident work product, can I go through all of the work products and sort of accumulate them for my own personal archive?
Yes, you can still get inactive work products. So you can still use the work product service, request it, and get the full work product. You just can't update them anymore.
Okay, good. So that's how I can build my permanent record of an incident if I want to go back and analyze everything that was done.
Correct.
Yeah. But after it's been archived, I can't do that.
That is correct.
Okay. So it's between close and archive that I need to grab my historical record.
Yeah, and really, you don't necessarily have to get that last version that you got notified as inactive, because the only real difference between the two is that the work product identification status says inactive. So once you get the inactive, you can say, oh, I've got everything that's important already, if I have been getting them all along.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, Roger, and just to make sure I'm really understanding this right, closed then would be typically associated where the incident is ended, but it just hasn't been archived yet.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. So you could close the incident for updates until your record until you say, okay, record management system, let's clear everything off. Now you can say, okay, now just go ahead. It's been archived, and I'll archive the incident out.
Okay. One thing I've kind of thought about with this is, can anybody close any incident?
Yes. Right now, anybody can close the incident on the owning core. Right. So by owning core, what I mean is, one of the things you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about some of this stuff is that there are multiple cores or servers that may have your incident and work product based on your agreements. So let's say, if you've worked with our test servers, we have test 1 through 4. So we'll just pick 2 to make it a little easier. Test 1 and test 2. I have a application that created an incident on test 1, and it automatically got shared to test 2. Any client on test 1 could close the incident, but no clients on test 2 could close the incident because they are not on the core that owns the incident.
Seems like at some point there might need to be something to put a little control in there on closing.
It could be once we figure the right thing out to do, because that gets complicated as to who should be able to do it.
Right.
How flexible do we want to be able to specify who is allowed to do that?
Okay.
Yep, and that's a great topic for one of these calls. And we have a lot of policy decisions that are on that fine line between the application side and the usage side. In this particular case, we made a decision to not make a decision and say, okay, anybody can close the incident, leaving the policy to the organizations that are sharing their data to the core to say, okay, only the emergency management application can close the incident, or nobody's allowed to close an incident except for XYZ person. That, to me, doesn't seem terribly rigid, and maybe there is something that the community responds to saying, okay, usage people, we want you to enable that only the application that created the incident can close the incident. And if that's what the community comes back and says, heck, we can do that easily. But my guess is there's going to be enough of a variety there that it'll take some discussion before we can determine whether the policy on who closes an incident is the application responsibility or whether it needs to be dictated inside of usage. So that's really where we are now, and that's what these pilots will be doing. And after we get the pilots done, we will have had dozens of examples of people working with it in the real world, and out of that we can call that fine line whether closing an incident falls on the usage policy side or on the application policy side. So that's the exciting part of where we are at this time.
Yeah, the other way you can actually control that is more core distribution. You could think of it as the core might service just the small set of people who create and close incidents, the police department. You would then have a ConOps that you probably only have one application that opens and closes incidents. He would be the only one that would actually have an adapter that does that. And if that incident gets shared outside the core, that incident can't be closed by anybody who's not attached to the actual core that owns the incident. So there are some ways to control it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Anybody else with questions for Roger? No, then let me ask whether Chip has an announcement to make.
The SUAs went out, all 178, and of course there may be an issue on version control with respect to the SUA. So if you get a second message, use the latest one, and if you don't hear from us in the next few minutes, everything should be okay.
All right, excellent. So we expect you to review them, get them signed, back to us. You'll get the password and can begin downloading the latest version of usage. And we won't have to go through this routine again for a couple of years. So.
Actually, good.
All right, then how about if we open the mic to any questions about anything, any comments, thoughts? The mic is open.
Hey, Jim, this is Adam. So is this new usage agreement, is there a new version of the software that goes along with it, or is the core-to-core capability in the original version 1 distribution?
The current version is the version that's associated with the SUA, and the current version is the version that is posted to our website. There was a previous version 1.0 that had limited distribution.
I see.
We can
Thank
talk offline if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Chip, Mike Smith, I sent you a phone number to call. Would you do that before we start the next session?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments? We had close to 40 folks on the call this time. That's a great number. And I think that Roger did an excellent job of giving you a lot of information, as that information is all available. This call is being recorded and will be available on the usage collaboration platform within the next day or so, and you'll be able to jump in there and take a look at it. Go back through any of the sections, and hopefully in the next day I'll get a chance to chapter that so you can jump right into the specific parts that Roger was talking about to get your questions answered. We plan to continue to have this kind of a session fairly frequently as the new version has rolled out, to give everybody a chance to identify those specific services that you want to use and begin to unfold it. But getting your resource profile made using the resource profile service, getting incidents and notifications are really the core of everything that you do. And by covering and building that particular part of your adapter, you have the general framework for touching virtually every other one of the domain services. So this is really the core of how you want to talk to the core. So let me open it up one more time. Anybody with other questions, comments? Hearing none, let me wish you all an excellent couple of weeks. We'll keep you updated during that period of time. Get those SUAs back in, and let's all start going. Thank you, everybody. Bye.